Hi, I'm Ash Self, and you are watching the Permanent Rain Press.
Hi everyone, it's Chloe with the Permanent Rain Press. Today I'm happy to be joined by Ash Self. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Yeah, chilly,
Is it really cold in London right now?
upsettingly cold. Yeah, yeah, but we move.
Winter weather already, but the holidays might be a bit of a cheery time. So, I mean, hopefully you'll get to do some activities out there. Of course, we'll be talking soon about a show that came out in the summer in August, Heartstopper. But before we dive into the show and Felix, I wanted to ask you about your background and the initial spark that made you want to pursue the arts as a career.
Yeah, so I'd never really acknowledged acting as like a possibility. And then I started doing like the school plays. Always the tiniest role. I had like one line. And then I was like the guard at the door or whatever. Um, but when I came out, I started having problems with the drama teacher at school and kind of gendering and stuff, and almost out of spite, sort of was like, well, I'm going to be an actor. So and auditioned for the National Youth Theatre totally on kind of a whim. I saved up for the audition and then went to it and got in, which I was just like baffled by. And yeah, just kind of went from there. Just was like, oh, maybe I can do this.
I love that it kind of came out of spite and then you ended up actually like learning to love it as you kind of went
Yeah.
along. And you mentioned in the National Youth Theater, which I wanted to talk about, like how beneficial was that class for you and what do you enjoy about just being involved in this kind of theater arts community?
I mean, National Youth, it was amazing. It was like a 2 week course when you're under 18. And they were so supportive. So when I auditioned, I was able-bodied, or like I didn't use a wheelchair. And then over the years started using one, and they were always happy to adapt whenever I went to auditions or was, involved in any research and development stuff. Yeah, and it's such a great intro into the arts in England. And I know they're trying to branch out away from London as well, like because everything's quite London centric. But yeah, it was such a great like introduction into everything, the great contacts. Yeah, really would not have got Heartstopper at all if I hadn't done that.
I was watching a production or a short film that you were in that was kind of submitted to like a film festival involved with National Youth Theater, the Lonely Ghost Club, which I thought was so great. I mean, you had the ghost cloak on, it looks sweaty, but running away from the Ghostbusters car was like a nice comedic touch. So is it kind of like those memories that also form part of your experience as part of the theater?
Yeah, I mean, my friend wrote that film when we were 16, my best friend, and then my other best friend really wanted to film it. He really likes cameras and photography and stuff. And I have none of those skills, so I was like, I'll put the sheet on my head. And it was not sweaty at all. It was October, it was freezing. But yeah, I think I just like making things, and all my friends have always been quite creative. So if you've got a group of people you can like make things together, it's always fun.
And it's always more fun to make things with your friends as well, kind of take some of like that pressure off and get those creative juices going. Earlier this year, you completed your English and creative writing degree. Congratulations.
All
What
right.
makes you passionate about literature and using your words to tell a story?
I've always really loved reading. I was a very, very avid reader, or nerd, whatever you prefer, as a kid. And read a lot. And then kind of as I moved through school, I realized that English was what I was most comfortable doing. And then because I didn't end up getting any A levels, an English degree was what I was like, well, I could do that. Um, and a lot of the work experience I'd done had been in writing as well. Um, but I just think words are like, especially if you're kind of like a marginalized person, and I can't always do super physical or active things. So words are something I can kind of use to my advantage, I suppose, and they're a very good way of communicating with people that you wouldn't necessarily always like, interact with otherwise.
Definitely like the self-expression aspect. You have a poetry account that you only had like two poems posted there, but I love this one. Like the line was like an ambulance siren desperately needed but laden with expectations. Like in terms of writing, like where do you get, know a lot of it's probably like yourself and experience, but where else do you draw inspiration from?
First, I don't know how you found that account. I really thought I deleted it. Um,
Not at the time I wrote these questions a couple months ago. So
okay.
who knows? Maybe it's gone now, but it was still
Yeah,
there. I was like looking for him, like, oh, this is a really great poem.
blimey. Sorry, I've forgotten the question. So sorry.
No worries. I was like, where do you kind of draw inspiration from aside from your personal experiences when you're writing?
A lot of it is personal experience. I think that's kind of not easy in like a lazy way, sort of, but it generally feels, I guess, if you want to write kind of, I don't know, it feels like authentic, I guess. But yeah, I guess just moving through the world. I like sometimes I like writing based on like sort of films that I've seen or like songs I've listened to. Something will come from that maybe, but yeah, sort of whatever's going on in my brain really.
And more recently, you've been pursuing stand-up comedy, which is about connection, timing, also requires thick skin. What inspired you to be behind the microphone and share your original work in this aspect of the arts?
Attention to a degree. Um, chronic need for attention. Um, I have always loved stand up, and I said when I was really little, because I really loved like old people British comedy for some reason. I was like, oh, I want to be a comedian when I grow up. And then bought a joke book and was someone explained to me you have to write your own jokes. And I was like, oh, that's far too difficult. I can't do that. Um, and then I did I kind of was still interested in it as I got older, and then someone recommended I do a Soho Theatre comedy lab course. Um, and I did that during lockdown, so it's kind of weird. The first time I did stand up was over Zoom, uh, and the the delay makes it really like, oh, no one's laughing. Um, yeah, and then did a couple of gigs in person and really enjoyed it. And I would love to do more of it, but finding accessible comedy nights is quite difficult because they're often in like basements or above pubs or whatever. So it's kind of a pain, but
We were at the chronically hilarious part of Camden Fringe in August, I know, which was kind of like a big gig or set that you got to do. How was that experience?
that was so much fun. It was run by my friend Dean, who is an amazing comedian. He's from the States, but yeah, does comedy over here. Um, yeah, so much fun. There was a ramp onto the stage. Like a lot of the audience was also disabled. Yeah, just really great to be in an environment where I was like, oh, this is gonna, land because my experience is more sort of generalized.
How would you describe your style of comedy and humor? Like, are you still finding your voice? You mentioned kind of a lot of inspiration, very British like comedians. Like, for those who don't know how that comedy hits or lands, how would you describe it?
I think it's quite self-deprecating. And I'm always, as someone who's disabled, it's a tough one because you want to use self-deprecating humor in a way that, everyone can appreciate it and laugh, but also you don't want to be like, haha, I'm disabled. Non-disabled people laugh at me because that's counterproductive, I guess. But yeah, it's quite self-deprecating and quite like um, I guess a shock value as well because I think because I know I look really young. I know I don't look 22. So making kind of really morbid jokes about turning 18 in hospital and stuff is quite people are like, oh, I have to laugh or I'm gonna just gasp, and that's not appropriate at a comedy show.
So it's like trying to be, entertaining, but not going backwards. And,
Yeah.
the progress. Yeah, that's I'd love to hear a set one day. Hopefully, you get more and more opportunities, more accessible spaces. I'm guessing, like, you mentioned your friend coming from the US, that it's kind of slowly going where there are more opportunities for stand-up comedians like yourself too.
I think so. I think there's more disabled comedians on TV, I think, which is nice. People like Rosie Jones are doing a great job of, paving the way for that. I guess it's more just about like spaces, really. It really is because I've had comedians reach out to me saying that they would like me to do their nights, but it's just not feasible, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, fingers crossed in the future it will move a bit more the right way.
Now we'll get into Heartstopper before more of your personal story, but you star as Felix Britton in season two. What can you share about your audition and casting process?
It was strange. So I had auditioned for season one. I'd auditioned for Isaac. Obviously didn't get it, but Toby does a great job. So um and then I got a call from my agent one day saying we're running a casting workshop with Daniel Edwards. Do you want to come along? But it was kind of a trek. It was like 2 hours from where I live. But I had not conveniently, I'd had my top surgery cancelled the day before, so I was like, not doing fantastically. And my stepdad was like, if it gets you out of the house, I will drive you to this casting workshop. Um, which is very nice for him because it was so long and he's just basically sat in the car for 4 hours and did nothing. But yeah, so I got to the casting workshop, did maybe 5 minutes of improv in front of the casting director, and then went home and was like, well, that was fun. Uh, don't know what it was for, but it was fun. Um, and then got a self-tape request, did the tape. Probably one of the tapes I've agonized over the longest because I was like, I would really like this role. Um, and then they kind of mentioned me going to where they're based, like where the show is based, to have a meeting, and then it didn't really work out. So I was like, oh, but obviously not got it, but and then got a call the next day saying that they're going to offer you the role just straight off, and I was like, excuse me. Yeah, it was a very good experience.
How far into the process did you maybe learn a bit more about, with this character that you might be playing? Because you mentioned initially going in, you didn't have any idea at all. It was kind of just like, you were there, you did a little improv bit, and yeah.
Yeah, so when I did the tape, they told me to read the third book. Um, Obviously Felix is not in the book, so I was sort of like, oh, it's a nice book, but um, yeah. So I didn't know much. They sent that Felix was kind of, a bit of a party goer, sort of really wanted to get into art college because art college is where the fun is at. Um, and that was kind of all I knew. I'm fairly sure Felix wasn't written as disabled because I was one of the only disabled people in the casting room. So that was exciting. But yeah, I didn't really know much about them. It was kind of fun though, I think, when you have a little bit of info and you kind of fill in the gaps yourself.
For sure. Well, kudos to your family, to your stepdad for making the drive out with you. So when you were cast, like what kind of conversations did you have, if any, with Alice Oseman, your producer's director, about Felix? Because you mentioned that you weren't sure if they were disabled, but it ended up the disability and mobility aids, your own medical devices were also incorporated as part of this character.
Yeah, so my first day I had a chat with Patrick, the producer, um, and I think most of the conversations were about the character, like what we thought about the character, kind of what, wanted to do with it. Um, and then there were obviously conversations, but most of the conversations around me being a wheelchair user were kind of logistic conversations in terms of getting on set, like what I needed, what I could eat, stuff like that. Um, and then some conversations with costume about I use little clips for my feeding tube to clip it to my top. And some of those have like characters on them, and obviously those are the copyright problems. Um, so yeah, there weren't huge conversations around Felix's disability kind of coming into the story, which almost kind of was nice. I think it wasn't like, we have a disabled actor, quick, make a, like an EastEnders episode out of it. It was sort of like, you're here, slay, it was cool.
I like how you mention it like that, as it wasn't really like it wasn't forced on your character in any big thing where it's like we have to have a meeting with Ash because of this. It more so just happened kind of naturally when you were cast. Can you share about what backstory you were either provided or maybe kind of created yourself for Felix? Any kind of tidbits or insight into their life?
Maybe this is gonna make me seem like a terrible actor. I don't know how much I did of that. Um, I guess it was kind of like Felix isn't miles away from me, but I guess uh has more energy than me, I guess. Like I'm 22, but I'm like, oh, what do you mean I have to be out past 11? It's bedtime. Um, so yeah, it was kind of nice to explore someone with that kind of energy and like, let's go and do stuff. And that dynamic with Naomi as well. Kind of trying to tone them down a bit, be like, dude, chill. Um, yeah, in terms of backstory, I knew the character was non-binary, um, and like I said, like a party goer, and I think described in the breakdown I was given as really kind. Um, yeah, it didn't. I'm so rubbish. Um, yeah, it felt quite a natural character to kind of jump into without loads of which maybe is maybe I should start. Maybe I should not say that. Maybe I'm gonna get sacked now. I don't know.
It's good to go in with an open mind and sometimes not have all the specifics because you never know they might come up in the future. How old do you think they are? Were you given the age?
I mean, they're 16 because they're going from school to college, so they would have just done, I guess, GCSEs. And obviously, I know from experience that being openly trans in school is very difficult. So I also imagine that their eagerness to go to art college was kind of pushed by that, like, oh, if it's an arty environment, it's going to be a more accepting environment and an easier environment to exist in. That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to think about that aspect because maybe it's something that you've experienced at school as well and wanting a bit of an escape, a more inclusive space. We meet Felix in episode 2 at the Lambert School of Arts open evening. As you mentioned, they're excited for the parties. Did you think about their love for the arts and, maybe how it influenced their interest in art school? Like, what kind of artists do you think they were? Because we never got to see any of Felix's application pieces or anything like that.
Yeah, I think so. My audition piece was part of it was a scripted bit, and then the second bit was an improv about like a kind of a video application for the art school, kind of talking about what art they like. And I think I went with like um them kind of saying, I really love art, but I'm not interested in artists because they're all, like dead old white guys. Like I don't care what they have to say, really. Um, but yeah, I think I really like to imagine. I can't actually remember what the painting's called. It's the Roman version of the myth of Zeus being eaten by his dad. Or like, or no, it's not. Zeus doesn't get eaten by his dad, but one of the gods being eaten by oh, it's terrible. I can't remember his name. But yeah, and I find that I really like that painting, even though it's kind of horrible. But I kind of like to imagine Felix as like, this is gnarly, like um kind of really likes that sort of really weird kind of, classical art, but really odd.
I would have loved to see like that piece and that whole like application video. I mean, maybe you could record it, they could release it as like a blooper or be real kind of footage. But that's kind of like a nice thing to go back to in terms of Felix as a person and the character. You mentioned Naomi, they're already friends when we meet them. Did you and Belle ever consider how long they'd known each other for? Like, how did they meet? Did they go to the same school? Did they meet at some kind of art event ahead of time?
I mean, I think from their relationship, I don't know if it feels like they met at school. We didn't really chat about me and Belle had met for 10 minutes before we started um shooting. And so we didn't really chat about it, but I feel like from the relationship they have, I feel like it's kind of like they met at some kind of event, maybe like, yeah, maybe like an art event or some kind of like trans group away from school, because they have that kind of, oh, we're going to be friends for a long time kind of not restricted by when school starts and ends, if that, yeah.
Felix's Instagram account at Felix Riots is so perfect. Did you have any influence or was that predetermined?
No, I did not. Um, I hated taking those pictures. Um, it was yeah, it was fun, and it was it was silly, but I was sort of like, I don't know what I'm doing.
I know it's like photo day, class photo day. It's like you come and
Yeah,
they're like you have to pose for these Instagram photos for the feed, and like this is not what you would post on your
yeah.
own feed.
I didn't realize they were real Instagram accounts. Like, so, but I'm happy with them. I think they let me swear in one of them. I think I've got two fingers up in one of them, which, thrilled with. Um, yeah, I haven't actually seen the account, so who knows?
There could be some more images or footage hiding on there that you
Yeah,
you
who
you will
knows?
have to uncover one day. But
Mm.
they do become fast friends with Elle, Felix, and Naomi. In your opinion, why did they bond so well with Elle? How did their personalities complement each other, and what did they see in her?
I do think for sure, trans people have a tendency to like drawn together. I guess it's like a safety and numbers thing, and also kind of like when you share experiences with someone that are quite specific, it's easier to bond with them. You don't have to explain so much stuff to people. So I do think that's a part of it, and I think especially Elle coming from the school where she's the only trans girl, and she's moved from the boys' school, so it's kind of been difficult for her. Um, I think, I think especially with Elle and Naomi kind of being like, "Oh, you're a trans girl too," and then Felix was like, "And I am here to cause chaos and drag you to parties."
What do you remember from the Lambert open evening scene? Like, is there anything in particular that you can share from set and from filming?
Um, I think it was kind of it wasn't the first thing we filmed. I don't think it was the last thing we filmed. Um, well, yeah, my memory is terrible.
I feel like it
Uh,
was so long ago
it
for
was,
you now.
yeah, over a year ago now, which is crazy. Um, yeah, it was a fun day. And me and Bel and also Yaz had time to get to know each other, so I feel like we were more comfortable kind of mucking about, not mucking about, professionally mucking about on camera together. Um, yeah, it just felt nice. And a lot of the supporting artists they had got in for those bits were also trans. My friend Phoenix plays the older student who kind of turns around and has a little chat with Felix, which was a nice surprise. I had no idea he was doing that. Um, yeah, it felt like a really like warm environment to be in. It was nice.
And then there was the Here and Queer exhibition. Did you get to spend some time maybe meeting some of the other main cast who you hadn't met before or interacted with as much on set just because you didn't share scenes together?
Yeah, I think by that point, because that was the last thing we filmed, I had met most of them when we were doing the bonfire scene, um, and sort of had a chance to chat. But it was nice. It was nice to be in scenes together. There's a bit they cut, which is when they all meet and they would sort of improv, just kind of introducing ourselves to each other. Which I was so tired. I think there was one point where I just looked at Joe and he said, "Oh, hi, Felix, nice to meet you." And I just went, "Felix," just said my name and nothing else. Um, yeah, it was nice to like feel involved in the main cast, kind of on screen rather than just behind the scenes.
We did get to see a quick interaction between Felix and Isaac. They shared a hello hug. I feel like for you, this is like a full circle moment.
Yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, no, for sure, yeah. Um, yeah, it was funny. I don't know if Toby knows that I auditioned for Isaac, but you know.
You will know soon enough. But I love that they did include kind of that hug because them as characters are meeting for the first time. But you mentioned that Felix has this friendly aspect, and I think same with Isaac, like a friendly aspect. So they didn't have to know each other before to kind of introduce each other and give them them a hug. Which was your favorite scene in season two that Felix was not in, and why?
Such a good question. And I have seen the whole season twice. Um, I really liked the scene in Paris where they're in, I think it's the Louvre. It might be somewhere else. And it's Nick and Charlie mucking about, and then the museum worker shouts at them. And I just liked that it was Eros because I had no idea he was going to be in it. And I was like, ah. Um, and it was quite fun. A lot of the scenes in Paris are really cute. The ones with Tao and Elle in the Louvre are really, really lovely.
Was that for you like a bit, oh, I didn't get to go with Paris. I know it wasn't kind of in the books of these new characters, but I mean hopefully can be more involved in the future. Fingers crossed, we'll see. But yeah, those scenes were so nice to film. A lot of them paralleled the books really well.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, it was kind of a bummer to miss Paris. I was like, I know we're not in it, but I could have worked as a runner or something. I want to go to Disneyland.
You're like, I would have taken like a reduced
Yeah, yeah.
salary to go with you guys.
Could have handed out lunch, you know.
Felix has a really cool shirt and sweater collection. Did you have a favorite one to wear, and is their style similar to your own?
I love all their jumpers. My favorite one was the I think it was in the open evening. It's the brown one with the kind of bits that are hanging off it, like the colored sort of bits of wool, um, which I'm so intent on stealing at some point. Um, yeah, their style kind of like my. I had a chat with costume before we started, and also by this point I hadn't had top surgery yet, so I kind of wanted something baggier on top. Um, so yeah, similar in terms that we wear baggy stuff, but much more kind of out there. I kind of wish I dressed more like Felix. Maybe if they let me steal all my costume, I will dress more like Felix. But
That was a good one. I think it was like this rainbow kind of striped knit you had on in the open
yeah,
night. Yeah, really kind of bold and fun. Hopefully
really
maybe you'll
comfy.
maybe this wardrobe, do you know if they still have that sweater? You think it's gone by now?
Just somewhere,
You might have to
some.
call them up and check the archives.
Yeah, I'll find it. Don't worry.
You work closely with Bel and Yaz, as you were saying. What can you say about them as people and as scene partners?
They're both so lovely. Belle was a bit more anxious, I think, going into it because she'd not really done the acting before. Not that I had done much more, to be fair. Um, but yeah, it was nice to kind of it was really nice for us to go into it together rather than as individual new characters having to kind of, a big TV set is quite a stressful environment to go into the first time. So both of us going in together was really lovely, and we stay in touch a lot. And Yaz is also very, very lovely. They're both really giving, and in scenes where it's kind of not so scripted and you're just sort of chatting, it was very, very easy to chat to them. There wasn't any awkward, like, you know, fumbling over words or anything.
The one thing I think you fear going into a new show with new cast members is like when they say cut, you're just like they're not saying anything to each other,
Yeah.
awkward silence.
Yeah, not none of that at all, which was really, really nice.
And I think for viewers, you see three strong trans artists who are like unapologetic to be who they are. That really shows through your characters on screen. Heartstopper, of course, was renewed for season three. Should you return, what might you like to explore with Felix and their journey?
I think again, it's nice to just explore the way that trans teens, interact with each other and interact with the world, especially as it is at the moment. And yeah, it's interesting. It would be interesting to explore maybe Felix's disability a bit more, but then I also don't want that to be because Felix isn't a main character, and I don't want it to feel like it's been shoehorned in for the sake of it, really. So if it doesn't come in naturally, then fine. And I think representation doesn't always have to be explicitly talking about it. I think just seeing people, seeing a wheelchair user vibing on TV is pretty cool, I think. Not to toot my own horn, but
For sure. And then obviously hoping to see them at Lambert in the fall for sixth form with Elle and with Naomi. Are there any other storylines aside from your own that you've been really invested in and are excited to see more of in the future seasons and why?
yeah, I really liked Darcy's storylines in season two. Obviously more difficult to watch. I think season two does get a bit darker than season one. But I guess it's kind of, I guess the show is like growing up with its characters. Yeah, so I'm really excited to see more of Darcy's storyline. Um, and also I really liked Isaac's asexual storyline. I thought that was really important, quite a nice like surprise. I don't think I've seen it discussed on really. I mean, there's definitely other shows that have discussed it, but personally, I hadn't seen it discussed on TV before.
You've stated how grateful you are to be a part of a show where you don't have to tone yourself down or apologize for who you are. Can you elaborate? I know you touched on this a bit with Patrick, but how did the production really make you feel seen, heard, and valued?
Yeah, I mean, I think sometimes because I'm both trans and disabled, I often feel like sometimes I'm if I'm playing a disabled role, I'm too trans. If I'm playing a trans role, I'm too disabled. And I didn't feel like that with Felix. I didn't feel like I had to push myself more to, do scenes stood up or not be in my chair or anything like that. It felt very much like everyone was sort of like, do what you want to do. So in the tent scene, I'm not in my chair. I'm sat with Bel and Yaz, and then in other scenes, I am in my chair just because they're long days and it's just easier to be sat down so I don't fall over. Um, yeah, it was everyone was very much sort of go at your own pace.
How has the fan reception been? Have you been reading any of the online comments, the online reviews of season two?
I'm so bad for reading comments. Like everyone's like, don't read comments, and I'm like, but I'm nosy and I want to know. So yeah, I've been reading comments. Um, yeah, it's been nice to. I mean, almost everyone has been unbelievably delightful. And it's been crazy to hear from people like in different continents and stuff. Um, yeah, and the reception from other disabled young people as well has been like so good. And it's nice to know that Felix has contributed a bit to making people feel seen on a show that they already loved. Um, yeah.
Were you surprised when season two was released, like how much noise there was on places like social media, or did you kind of know what to expect going into it?
I did know what to expect as the release date got closer. I was like, I think after Pride, uh, and there was so many people, I was like, oh, this is serious. Um, yeah, so it wasn't a huge shock. I had learned after the casting announcement how to turn my notifications off, um, and
That's
stuff
something
like
they tell you in the process, like a social media course or something like they're like, okay, so this is what might happen for you. Maybe like don't get all the notifications on Twitter or on Instagram.
honestly, no, it was Belle really. Belle showed me how to make a TikTok and stuff, and then when the casting announcement was made, and I was like, my phone is vibrating itself off the table. She was like, turn your notifications off, you idiots. What are you doing? Um, yeah, so I think after that, I did kind of know what to expect and how to um handle it, but it's nothing compared to what the main cast gets. So I was like, I'm happy to sit over here. Um, and that, yeah.
I mean, and Belle is a social media maven, so one of the best to learn from, I'm sure, in that aspect. You mentioned Pride. Again, you were at London Pride with the Heartstopper cast. You also were marching at Trans Pride in July. Tell me about those 2 days, how beautiful and special it was for you, because you also remarked that you saw more wheelchair users in the crowd and in the community.
Yeah, so Pride in London, which is I guess the main Pride. I had sort of grown a bit, um, sort of have a complicated relationship with, because it kind of in the London queer community, a lot of people refer to it as corporate pride because it has become very corporate. But it was really amazing to be with, the cast and some of the crew and see like the reception that the show gets and how important it is to a lot of queer people. That was really special. Um, and also I've been attending it since I was 13, so this was almost my 10th one. And to be there, from being a 13-year-old on the sidelines, just like gawping at um people in all these amazing outfits and like all these cool people I'd seen on TV or whatever, and then to be like in it with Netflix was ridiculous, like so surreal. Um, and then Trans Pride, I love. Um, you don't have to pay entry to march. It's very much a protest. And yeah, and it's only in its fourth or fifth year, London Trans Pride, and to see how much it's grown over those years is just wild. And there were so many more wheelchair users there this year, and it was well organized. All the wheelchair users like lead the march, set the pace for everyone else. Um, yeah, and there's so much noise about transphobia in this country at the moment, and to see that actually a lot of people are just like, great, have a good time, was so uh kind of needed, I think.
And of course, the day, it's filled with so much like love and acceptance and joy, which is what you're all there to promote and celebrate. I wanted to talk about your personal story, what you feel comfortable with sharing, because you came out as transgender at age 14. You went through top surgery last year, I believe November 2nd. It's been 1 year, so happy 1 year for you. How has that journey been, being able to accept and understand yourself and your body?
Yeah, it's been difficult. It's been very long. So I came out as trans at 14. I don't know if it was a huge surprise to a lot of people who'd known me a long time, because as a child I was quite insistent that I was a boy and I would pick random boys' names, once a week that everyone had to call me. And then in secondary school I became really self-conscious about how I dressed and, being more girly. So I kind of tried that for a bit and it made me wildly unhappy. Um, so I kind of it was more a case of discovering the word for it. I kind of always knew that it was there. And then obviously that was quite difficult in quite a big school. I mean, probably better that it was big actually, because I guess everyone was sort of like, "Who are you?" Um, yeah, came out to my whole year group actually in an assembly, which was looking back insane. Who let me do that? Um, yeah, but it's been um so rewarding. And if I hadn't had the space to come out as trans at 14 and explore that and you know talk to other trans people, um I just would have been so miserable. I probably wouldn't have stayed in school. Yeah, and having access to gender affirming care as well was a really really long process, um but just so worth it.
What kind of specific individuals or groups would you like to kind of give mention to who have really like encouraged and supported you in learning more about yourself and your needs?
So I guess there were definitely teachers at school that I spoke to very, very early on and was sort of like having some funky gender feelings. And they were like, this is a safe environment, and made it clear to me that I could talk to them and it wouldn't go further if I didn't want it to. And also, yeah, my parents have been great. It's a difficult, um, not difficult, it's a complicated thing for a parent to accept, because, you're almost kind of being told by a child, "Oh, you don't know me," which isn't necessarily true, but it's I guess, a natural response to feel. And for my parents to be open-minded to accepting and learning with me was really great. Um, Yeah, my brother also is trans, so it's
I was
been
gonna say you and Mikey have been through kind of similar experiences. So of course Mikey's also someone I'm sure that you've been really close to, especially like within the past so many years.
for sure. I mean, trans siblings are not unheard of, but not particularly common. And I'm so grateful that we had each other through that, because obviously it can feel so isolating being trans and thinking, oh my God, there's no one else feeling like this. And then he's in the bedroom next door. Like, I feel the same way, man. Um, yeah, just so many people. Then again, like I said, the National Youth Theatre. I also went to youth groups run by Gendered Intelligence when I was a kid and met so many people there that I still talk to. Um, yeah, just all the trans people in my life really have been vital to because community really helps you learn about who you are.
On a daily basis, like how do you make sure that you're remaining kind and patient with yourself, especially when there's a lot of noise in the world, also on social media?
Yeah, it's difficult. It's definitely got more difficult the last few years. Um, it's a very good question. I don't know. I guess it's just taking time to allow yourself. There's a lot of stuff on social media, like, about how to take care of yourself by eating well or performing sleep hygiene or whatever. And sometimes you have to just be like, do you know what? I'm gonna fall asleep with the TV on and eat a Big Mac instead of, what I'm meant to eat, because you need a day where you just listen to what your brain is going, I want that. I don't need it, but I want it. And I do think that's important. And just being patient and not punishing yourself for human things. People make mistakes and they get upset and they react to things that don't necessarily seem in a way that doesn't seem logical. And you have to allow space for that to happen for yourself and also for the people around you as well.
Sometimes, mistakes happen and just being accepting of it and learning to also, I guess, maybe forgive yourself in some of these moments as well. You can act unassisted in your wheelchair and on crutches. So you are an advocate for disabled artists being given the right opportunities. Can you elaborate on maybe what needs to change in the film industry to help create opportunities for artists like yourself?
I think one of the best things is obviously writing characters that are disabled well is amazing. Um, and we need to give opportunities to disabled writers for that to happen and get disabled people in those rooms. But also when casting, I think if you can look through a script and go, this character could be disabled, there's no reason a disabled actor couldn't play that role. If they don't have to scale a building or run a marathon, then there's really no um reason. And I think sometimes that is one of the best ways from the very kind of bottom is to just be like, we'll get disabled actors in for this role, and you don't have to necessarily change the role. And a lot of the time you can trust the actor to do that work rather than rewriting the script. They'll say, oh, we need to tweak this a little bit because that's not going to work. But it's never anything huge. Like I said, if I don't have to wrestle someone, then I don't see an issue particularly. And I think it's literally just about having an open mind. It's changing the way you view disabled people and the way you view disabled performers, because they are willing to put their all in, because getting roles is so hard, unfortunately.
You often share GoFundMe campaigns for others to help with their transitions. Why is it important for you to use your platforms for these causes? People like yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have got top surgery without a GoFundMe, because it was, I was paying the deposit before I had even auditioned for Heartstopper, so my only income really was disability benefits and student loan. So and top surgery is very expensive, so I was like, oh, I really can't afford this. And I think a lot of people put off starting a GoFundMe for a long time because asking people for money is very vulnerable and very difficult, and you're almost always going to feel a level of guilt about it. But you know, they are really important at the moment in accessing gender affirming care. So if I can share GoFundMe's and people click on them and give, a fiver, if there's 20,000 people that look at it and 20,000 people give a fiver, that's a lot of money to a lot of GoFundMe's. So fingers crossed people do actually look at them.
I think it's great that you're sharing the word, and there's so many stories, people like yourself, and they're just trying to be more comfortable in who they are. And so any kind of steps to get to that end goal is, of course, I'm sure they appreciate it as well. You are set to star in the short film Fold as Riley. The film's currently looking for some more funding and some additional crew. Tell me about this project and what you're excited for.
Yeah, so it's a short film, and it basically just follows this couple. They're both transmasculine and both disabled, kind of ambulatory wheelchair users, and one of them gets top surgery, and it's about how they both kind of navigate that process, and how it affects their relationship. And I think it's such an important film because it's so tender. Like it's really gentle. There's no kind of, it really is just two people who have an experience maybe who is different, who have an experience that is maybe different to quite a large amount of the general population, but it's just about how they navigate kind of intimacy and living together in circumstances that aren't identical, I guess, to other people's. Yeah, it's really nice.
I guess when they gave you did they give you a pitch for it, or was it something that you had known about for a while and were kind of in mind for the role?
No, I got sent an email through my agent from the writer saying that they had a role in this short film that they thought I might be good for. And then kind of explained a bit about the film, and I was like, that sounds really cool. And then I taped for it, and then yeah, I think the next day they were like, yeah, please join in. And I was like, thank you. Um,
Hopefully you get to go to camera at some point in the near future.
yeah, fingers crossed.
It is at Fold Short Film on Instagram, so we'll include the link in the description as well. Stay tuned with updates and how you can help support. I have one more question for you. It is our signature question. If you could be any ice cream flavor, which would you be and why?
That's difficult because that's not what's your favorite ice cream. That's what ice cream would you be? Um, hmm. Um, maybe like this is so specific. Stracciatella, because it's like it looks kind of bland. But I'm not saying I look bland. I don't know what I'm talking about anymore. Um, you know, I'm more exciting, I think, the more you delve into me. That's nonsense. I'm so
I
sorry.
love that. I feel like, it's kind of, we like metaphors here. So it's like the whole more than meets the eye kind of thing you're going for. Not you're like, I don't look bland, do I?
I haven't had dinner yet. I think I'm just thinking about ice cream now. So
After dinner dessert, perfect for that. Thank you so much, Ash, for taking the time to chat. This has been such a pleasure.
thank you very much.
For all those watching, make sure to catch Ash in Heartstopper season 2. It is now out on Netflix, and we will see you next time.